speaking of wonderful presentations that are not mine, I'm going to bring up two of my wonderful colleagues, one that I've known for 47 years and one that I've never met before in my life, wonderful colleagues of mine. And this is Claudia Grobbel and David Morrow. They're going to come up from Oakland University and tell us a little bit about the wonderful things they're doing with AI and how it can help you look more like me. So come on up, folks.
47 years.
I apologize. Claudia, I didn't say it was you. I didn't say it was you.
I'm just messing with you.
Good morning. Hi, everyone. I'm David Morrow. I am an assistant professor of nursing at Oakland University, and I'm here with Claudia Grobbel, who is an associate professor of nursing, also at Oakland University. And we're going to do a quick presentation here about an assignment that we created, and it's a new assignment for graduate nursing students at Oakland. And so we're going to go over that. And so for our agenda today, we're going to talk about various aspects of the assignment. We're going to give a quick overview of Notebook LM and what it is and how it works. I don't know how many, I'm sure some of you are aware of Notebook LM and what it does, but I'm sure some of you don't know what it is, so we'll kind of go over that. I myself was not aware of Notebook LM until the idea for this assignment was presented to us, so I learned a lot. And I also learned that I need to be a little bit more aware of things that are going on out there with technology, because there's a lot of things happening that if we use it properly, we can make sure that they act as a really good aid for student learning. We'll talk a little bit about the goals and outcomes of the assignment as well. Sort of as a guidepost for where we hope everything will lead with this, although we haven't fully gotten all the feedback that we want from it. We'll give a quick overview of the assignment, and including how it works and what the expectations are for the students. And then we'll talk a little bit about student outcomes. We'll give an example of one of the students' notebooks and what they created. And we'll also give a little bit, we'll have you listen a little bit to the podcast that they created. We won't do the whole thing. I think the one that we're going to show you is about 17 minutes long, so of course we're not going to do the whole thing, but we'll do a few minutes of it so you can kind of get an idea of how that works. And then we'll talk a little bit about student feedback and some of the feedback that we're getting from the students already about what they liked about the assignment and how engaging it's been for them. And then we'll talk a little bit about our own feedback and maybe some feedback from you guys as well, and some of the next steps that we want to take. And I've been thinking a lot about things that we can do with Notebook LM and with other types of technologies that help students learn and that can be used in a positive way to help students engage with different kinds of material. Okay, we'll go right on ahead then. Turn it over to Claudia right now, and she's going to talk a little bit about Notebook LM.
Thank you, David. I get the fun part. I get to tell you how we got here, why this is important, why we're thinking this is an innovative assignment for nursing students, and give you a little bit of background. First question though, who knows about Notebook LM? Raise your hands. Well, you were a lot better than I was about 5 months ago, because I had no idea. I have been excited about AI. I have been on Oakland University's task force for AI, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. So I was kind of the background of how we got here, because I think this is how a lot of innovation starts, is I was having a conversation with Nick Bombers. I always check in with my e-learning and go, well, how can I make my course better? It's an asynchronous doctoral level course, and how can it be better? What's new on the technology? I have a tendency to be technology deficit. I can screw things up, so I always like to check in. And I was saying, you know, what's new? What I want to do a cool assignment, like one more paper. No. And Nick very casually says, "Have you heard of Notebook LL?" I go, "What?" I had done ChatGPT. I had, you know, looked at some other different programs, but this one intrigued me. So he and I went on this journey, looking at it, playing around with it, which we're going to show you some of what it is, and then decided to do an assignment for our students. Setting this up, this is a doctoral level leadership course for nursing students. They are at the end of their program. They have all types of papers. They know about evidence-based practice. They use the technology most of the time better than I did. And so what we wanted to do is create something that would help them learn concepts to dig a little bit deeper, but also as emerging leaders and change agents, lean into some of the new stuff that's out there and not be afraid of it and be able to practice that. So as we move forward, then we have to do the design. And I'm going to talk a little bit and hopefully show you some of that, how you set it up. I assume most of you have done online asynchronous courses. I know you guys have. I can't even look at you guys. It's over here. I want to know. And so there's certain strategies and things that we work on. So what we looked at, and of course I got ahead, is we wanted them to be able to use the technology. I have done work with other students with AI technology, and they're kind of fearful of it. I don't know if you use that in your courses, but some of my students think it's like a form of cheating. Like they're supposed to do, I have not. They're supposed to do it all themselves. So what we wanted to do is give them permission to explore, play around, and use it. We wanted them to be able to integrate their prior knowledge and how they've used evidence-based practice to do assessment, analysis, and synthesis of information. As well as we wanted them to see the capacity of this tool. I played around with it, David played around with it, I'm sure Rick has played around with it, and we did a lot of different things with that. So we wanted them to be able to do this. The next part of that is we wanted them to be able to see what their classmates or colleagues were doing so that they can evaluate. It's kind of a shared learning environment. This assignment technically isn't due till next week, so we only have 2 to show you. I have only 2 students that are working ahead, so we'll see how it works out, and then what we'll be able to do is evaluate it at the end. Okay, now we gotta go to the, I want to show you what the Moodle course page looks like. Because for me, setting this up was important. I think, you got my Moodle? Uh-oh. No, it's there. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just so you know, it hasn't been 47 years that I've known you. It's only been 42. Thank you, thank you. So can you scroll down, David? It's not, I want to go all the way down to the very end. It is their final assignment. It is integrating a whole host of different concepts in the course. The concept, as I said, it's leadership and healthcare issues, and they have a lot of macro concepts of regulation and finance, kind of that stuff that most bedside nurses don't think about, as well as the core skill set and concepts for being a successful leader, being able to manage communication conflict, as well as change agents. So this is the final module. This should look familiar to the Oakland people. I'm not sure OCC. Do you use Moodle? No. What do you use? Okay. I'm sure there's a similar translation. So one of the things that we do, or I've done that has been incredibly successful for my nursery students, is that we always have a page that talks about what they're supposed to do. And in that gives them the brief instructions. I have a 2-minute or less video that goes along to reiterate it, because as we all know, students learn differently. There are times I can look at the words and they don't sink in, but if I hear them, it sinks in. So that's me. It also gives them a link to the Notebook LM video and talks about what the goals of the project are. This being such a new tool, I also did a recorded PowerPoint of actually using the tool. The interesting thing about this tool is they can't get into it through their Oakland email account. They've got to go in through a Gmail account. Diane's nodding. So imagine me, as my now fiance says, you know, you've got all this education, you can't figure stuff out. I must have spent an hour or so trying to get it to work, and I'm on the Oakland account. So you have to be really clear. I know it sounds simple, but people will be like, oh yeah, I'm on my Oakland account, and I can't get there. And I'm not sure why, maybe Nick can tell me why we can't do it, but I think it's a licensing issue. We can't go from our Oakland. Okay, thanks, Dave. So what it is, I tried to make it as simple and easy for them to get there. I didn't want them to have to spend hours trying to figure it out. So this is what the project design looks like. Flip back. Maybe it's better if I go back to the section up here. There we go. Right? Flip back. Yeah. So, and then you see how this is planned out. Can you go up a little bit? Okay, so they had to select a topic, and they had to tell me in advance. This is not something you can do like overnight, like, oh, it's due next week. You need to spend a little bit of time with it. And so then, not only do they have the instructions, and we're going to show this to you, but I want you to know that there's a couple of things. Number one is they still had to use the evidence. They still had to load it into Notebook, and they still had to then like pick and choose what they wanted to do. Similar to if they were doing a literature search and they were doing their own analysis and organizing a presentation or something. So they still had to do that. And then the outcome was sharing their screen and their notebook, in essence, and they created a podcast. Now, I was intrigued by this. As you can tell, I'm only 46 years old. I remember when we didn't have this, and yet in the past year, everything is a podcast. And so Notebook LM has the capacity to do and have different outcomes. We chose this one because we thought it was most relevant for nurse leaders to help get their messages out. Because everybody's doing podcasts. Okay, who's done podcasts? All the time. No, nobody does podcasts. Well, they're fun. It's got to be like 10 or 12 minutes. It's like YouTube. So they did that, and they post their podcasts for their colleagues to listen to. And then the last part, which is always important to me, is their reflection about it. What they learned, did they like it, what is happening, so that then, you know, when David and I evaluate the assignment, we've got all the information for that. So that is the way we've set it up. I also have at the bottom questions, so that if they have questions throughout, they can post those, and some of them did, some of them didn't. Do you have any questions about this before we move on? I must have done a good job. Next slide. There we go. Oh, back up. Okay. I explained how we've set it up. Now I'm going to turn it over to David, and he's going to talk about what we got, which is fun.
example of one of the student notebooks. If you want to navigate through the notebook there, well, the podcast is really neat to listen to, but, you know, of course, the important thing for learning is what did the students get out of it? What, you know, besides just creating a podcast, which is relatively simple because the program does it for you. So we don't want to focus too much on that part, although it is really neat what that outcome is, and we'll talk about some other uses for that podcast and things like that as well. But go ahead and open up one of the notebooks for.
Which one do you want?
Let's do the one that she.
The veteran, orthopedic pain management, or disease.
She did the veteran orthopedic pain management. That one was pretty cool.
They were all really cool.
Yeah. And I made one really quickly. I just did one where I chose a bunch of inputs for health promotion and upstream methods of doing health prevention, and I just put everything in there, press the button, and it kind of spit out something that is really actually very polished and sounds really cool. So you can see here on the left we have all of the sources that the student input. You can put as many sources in as you want to, and what Notebook LM does is it starts to kind of integrate everything, and it will find all of the important points in whatever type of file that you put in there. You can put a web page in, you can put in a journal document, some kind of a journal entry, you can do text files, you can put blogs in there as well, and it will synthesize all of the information in a really neat way that kind of makes it easy to digest. So in the middle here we have the chat section, and you can then ask it to do things for you. You can tell it to create a study guide for you if you want. You can tell it to create the actual podcast. On the right side we have the notes section. And it actually will tell you a little bit about how to do certain things within Notebook LM. So if you want to, we can show one of the examples of what the podcast came out to be. Okay.
I just want to stress here, with this is in the chat section, is that whoever is designing it can ask questions. So you load your inputs like David said, but you have to, as the person who's using, say, can you summarize my articles in a paragraph or less? And so then you can go back and look at that, or you can say, tell me the common themes for this. And then once you do that, you can save it over here in notes. So she has 2 references here, but she's got a lot of notes that she put in and saved. So then you can actually, we're going to go to the podcast. She created a podcast.
You can put that podcast right up in the middle too.
Yeah.
So she has a link to it in the middle.
See, I have a touch screen, so I'm a creature of habit. So they've all submitted their podcasts here. So
Okay.
here's her podcast. This is what she submitted. This is what all of her colleagues get to see.
Okay, go ahead.
This is AI generated, by the way.
So today we're going to dive into something that's really, really important for all of us, I think. And that is, how do we make sure our veterans are getting the best possible recovery after they have orthopedic surgery, and specifically, how do we manage their pain?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know, for those of you listening, like this isn't just, you know, some kind of abstract medical topic. This is about like getting you back to doing the things you love.
Right.
You know, feeling good again and avoiding those long-term pain issues that can really, you know, just make life difficult.
Exactly.
So that's really what we're going to be exploring today.
Yeah, we've got some really interesting material to go over today.
Yeah.
We're looking at a paper that's focused on a very specific type of leadership in nursing. And it's really fascinating. What we're going to try to understand today is how this kind of leadership style can really dramatically improve the entire experience for veterans who are recovering from these types of surgeries by really zeroing in on their very, very specific needs.
So let's unpack this a little bit. You know, post-operative pain. I mean, it's a given after surgery, right? Like, you're going to have some pain. But why is it particularly challenging for veteran orthopedic patients? Like, what makes their situation so unique and different?
Yeah, you know, it's not just the surgical pain itself. It's that veterans who are undergoing orthopedic procedures often have a very, very complex medical history.
Right.
You know, and the paper we're looking at, it points to some research from Kearns and his colleagues back in 2011.
Okay.
And they highlight a much higher incidence of chronic pain, PTSD, and even a potential tolerance to opioids
Oh, wow.
within this community. When you think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these folks have had previous injuries, maybe combat related,
Right.
that have led to these ongoing pain issues. And then you add in the psychological impacts
Right.
of their service, and you can see why a standard, like one-size-fits-all approach is.
Okay, so that was just an example. You know, and that actually sounds really polished. When I did it with my own notebook, you know, and it just starts having this conversation that sounds really natural and really normal, and it was kind of mind-blowing. I didn't, you know, like I said, I haven't been investigating things like this enough with AI, and I didn't realize, because, you know, you hear the AI-generated YouTube videos, and they kind of sound really clunky, and this actually sounds like a really natural conversation. You know, so the output is really cool, but of course, you know, where the rubber meets the road is kind of what did the students learn, and how did it help them to engage with the information and with the material. So the feedback from students that we've gotten so far, one of them has reached back out, and I think she made a comment along the lines of, this is the most impactful and the most fun assignment that she's done in her whole DNP program at this point. So one of the students at least, and I think another one, said that they really enjoyed it, that they found it very engaging. So we were really happy to see that. We wanted to do something that the students didn't feel was kind of a waste of their time, of course. So we've gotten some really good feedback. Did you want to offer any more feedback, Claudia?
No, that's all we have right now. I mean, we'll have more in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we have kind of a small class, and again, the assignment isn't quite due yet, so a couple of students did get ahead on it, luckily, so we got a little bit of an opportunity to get some feedback from them. But we think that this is very promising, and that this is something that we can use. We're going to find ways to kind of tweak it a little bit as we move forward, and see if maybe there are different ways that we can use this type of assignment to get students engaged in the material that they're learning and that they're interacting with. So applicability to future assignments, obviously there's got to be other ways that we can use this. I was thinking about myself, when I was in undergrad, I think graduate school is a little bit easier for me than undergrad, because I like to write, I like to analyze, and those things kind of flow naturally with a graduate program. When I was in undergrad, there were aspects of being an undergrad that I didn't really like very much, in terms of rote memorization of a lot of material and things like that. And I often found myself using kind of creative means to engage myself with the information. And if I had had something like this, I think that this would have been another tool that I could have used as a study guide. You know, create a podcast, and then while you're driving around or going off places, you can listen to a podcast about things that you're supposed to be learning. You know, so there's a lot of uses for this that maybe we haven't thought about yet. And of course, we'd like to get a little bit of feedback from all of you and get any ideas that you might have as well. And of course, there's other AI applications that can aid with learning aside from Notebook LM. So we'll be looking at this a lot in the coming months. We're definitely going to use this in our upcoming class in the fall, because we'll be teaching this class in the fall, and we're going to see which, like how we perhaps need to tweak the assignment a little bit. But as of right now, all the feedback that we're getting has been very positive, so we're really happy about that. Anything you want to add, Claudia?
I think that there's two components, as David alluded to stress from this. Number one is the student feedback and what they learn. We are still, that's evolving. It's not just a fun assignment. We want them to be able to use this to make a difference. Number two is from a faculty, and David and I have had informal conversations because we don't have all the information yet. But what is a quality outcome? Part of their reflection is they've got to review that podcast and say what was accurate, what wasn't, is it too generic? I need to tell you, it sounds really polished and great, but some of it, honestly, it's like blah blah. We've just filled. And so what they need to be able to do is critically assess that as opposed to just accepting it as it comes out of the AI. AI is only as good as the people who are using it, and so that's what we have to look at. I am looking at it with my professor hat on going, she only had 2 references. I'm sorry, but I didn't tell them how many references. I would have not thought that. The other ones we've looked at had more. So we need to, as faculty, be the drivers of making this a better assignment, as well as reinforcing with our students how this tool can be applicable. I mean, you can do a lot of cool things if we have a lot more time. You can make outlines, you can do slides, you can throw in stuff and get a study guide. Students today are using chat and taking my lectures, throwing them in and getting questions so that they know how to help them prepare. So it reminds me, I don't want to leave you before we do questions, my friend who is an AI engineer who we know and love. And he talks about AI and he starts out saying, remember we used to have the slide rule. Everybody used it, and then we had calculators, and we didn't want people to use calculators. They had to know how to do the slide rule or do it by hand. And now today, if I said you had to do all those without a calculator, you'd kind of go, what? So we are in an evolution now of these tools, and I can suspect in 5 or 10 years, this becomes part of what we do and how we do it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Questions? What do you think? What poke holes in it? Let us know. Yeah.
I guess my question is more about how would you use this time? People want to hear that.
Hi, thank you. So I teach most of the undergraduate students, and I'm thinking about the discussion question. And of course, for the undergraduate students, especially the freshmen and the sophomore, you know, getting them to really dig into the discussion question and add to the discussion question opposed to I agree or yes, that was great. So have you thought or did you do something, I don't know if you have discussion questions in the DMP program, but would you take like discussion questions, put them together and then create a podcast? Could that be something that we got, and then they can listen to the responses that they gave, and it kind of engages into a podcast?
Everybody hear that? I welcome anybody's thoughts on that. I think that's a cool idea, and I, like you, I think we're trying to get them with discussion questions to go deeper. Not just go, hey, great job, I found that interesting, and how do you dig deeper? Part of what I've used with undergrads in AI is whatever outcome is the critical analysis and how they felt about it. And I am always in awe and humbled by what our undergrad students come back at and how some of them, intuitively know it's an iterative process. You put it in and then you have to keep refining it. Whether it's the podcast or the discussion outcome and how they evaluate it. So I think the sky's the limit. Anybody else want to comment? I'm getting my steps in.
Hello, Dan Arnold with the University. I've been using Notebook LM for a while now, and they do have a beta feature with the podcast where you could have students share out their notebooks and ask them to interact with other students' podcasts. You can interrupt the podcast in progress to ask questions. So I'm thinking of using that as a possibility for students to push that question and answer when there's something that they hear that they don't understand or maybe think is accurate. They can actually question those hosts and it pauses it. It's pretty cool. It's a little creepy too if you've not seen it before. I actually use PDF versions of PowerPoints and upload that into Notebook LM to generate podcasts as an alternative format to, like, say, lectures or accessing that content, because it is good at breaking it down and summarizing, some of the things that AI is just inherently better at and faster than humans. But to use it in that manner, I think is a really cool way to do it, and I think that's about it for me.
Wow. All right, can I find a beta testing thing? Woo!
Oh, yeah.
I just had a real quick question. When it comes to the podcast, can you edit it to change the information in it yourself as a student? Or is it just what AI picks out?
Right now, for what I found, right now, all we ask them to do is evaluate what it kicked out. I suspect if you can put questions in, like Dan said, that they should be able to edit. I also think that one of the things they can do with the podcast, so let's say part of it is too vague or they need to add more, they can then change the inputs on the reference side and then redo the podcast, which takes about 2 minutes. So they could redo the podcast as opposed to going in and trying to edit right now. I don't know, Dan, can they edit?
Can't edit it, and if you ask questions, it's not going to change that file. The MP4 still stays the same. The only way you'd be able to edit it is bring it into some kind of editing software, and then you're clipping things out of there. But then you have to worry about the choppiness of those edits. I like the idea of having them question what's already there, because that's what we want them to do, whether it's AI or humans anyway.
Okay, so my one concern with a lot of AI generated stuff is sometimes it's correct and sometimes it's completely false.
Exactly.
And I would love to see something that, especially if they're using it as a study tool, that's going to be kicking out accurate information, or at least let them edit it.
You're right, that's a drawback. One of the assignments I've used is for them to evaluate the accuracy of the AI generated essay, what they've come up with their questions. And a lot of them go, it's too vague, it's inaccurate, no current references. So, they're learning some of it, but it's not a perfect tool yet.
So one of the things that I worry about with AI is just how almost recursive it can be. Is there anything preventing them from asking AI to then do the evaluation itself? So create the podcast and then, hey, can you quickly evaluate this podcast?
I don't know. Anybody know the answer?
Yes.
Then it's still AI generated.
You have to put the MP4 file into another AI, like large language model.
Okay.
That's going to be evaluated, or the transcript from it to do that. But it's not going to queue against the podcast within Notebook LM.
Yeah, so what it is, what I hear is that you can't use the podcast on the notebook, but you can take the MP3 file or the transcript and put it in an AI tool and ask it to evaluate it.
Notebook is a retrieval augmented generation. It's only going to queue against the information you've given it to ask against. So that podcast file is part of that.
No, it won't. It's just, it's like if you have a notebook that you're using
and you're doing stuff, that's all it's gonna look at. It's not gonna go out anywhere else. One here.
I just have a question about the speakers. When you're entering like what you want, can you say I would like one speaker, I would like a roundtable discussion? And also, can you determine like the genders and maybe like the cultures of people so I can get like dialect differences?
At this point, I don't know the answer to that, but yet generally what we've found is it's two people. Generally male and female sounds pretty, the word I want to use, it's neutral. But I'm sure if they don't have it, they will have it.
They don't.
They don't. See, I'm looking over here at my technical. I told you I'm not technical. Okay, question over here.
Thank you. So I'm thinking about where the student learning pieces are for an activity like this. And it seems like one student learning piece is having the students find the inputs, right? Find the right articles, find the right material, which they can use AI to do for them. So they can ask an AI tool to find articles about these things and then feed them into the AI to have the AI tell them a summary of it. And then they can feed the summary into another AI tool to have that AI tool evaluate the summary. So I think an assignment like this, you really have to be careful to make sure that the various stages where you want student learning to occur, that actually occurs and is not being cognitively offloaded to another tool or to another environment. So I think that's something to really be careful about something like this. And I'm curious, is that something that you guys have explored? And have you thought about workarounds to make sure that those student workarounds are not being utilized?
That's a really good point, and I understand, and trust me, I feel that, where we're at. I'm going to open up. Anybody else have any feelings before David and I weigh in?
It's the same for any assignment. It's not specific to this one. I think that's the thing we have to tackle.
So I'd like to talk about my experience as a graduate student using Notebook LM in addition to being an instructional designer who uses it. To your point, I have used Notebook LM to put in tons of articles that I've selected to do projects, generate a podcast to get an overview. So I feel a little bit less overwhelmed when I first start diving into those articles. But I know as a student, I need to know what's in them. I need to understand my topic, and I need to be able to identify any hallucinations that are coming out of this podcast. Because if I just say something in class or in any of my final materials that's a hallucination that my professor's going to clock immediately, the thought of being caught in that is terrifying. And I think that's something to keep in mind. Like, your students know that if they get caught, it's going to feel bad, it's going to look bad. Like, they're trying to learn the material in a way that is efficient to them. So I know whenever I use Notebook LM or any other AI tool, yes, I'm using it to learn things faster or do things more efficiently, but I'm double checking. I know that it's important to check for biases, check for inaccuracies, check for hallucinations. I've done this with projects where I know the material it's presenting me in that podcast is technically accurate, but none of it came from the materials that I gave it, and it's things that we haven't discussed in class. So if I start bringing in those points, it's going to be clear that that didn't come from me, that didn't come from what we were doing. So that's all I want to say, is that I think I know there is concern about what students are doing, but there's also an element of good faith, I think, needs to happen at some point when students are trying to learn. That's all.
And to answer a little more on that question, so one of the things, we get this question a lot, right? Like, how can we stop? So the short answer is you can't stop them from using those types of things, but what I would try to do is potentially like phase it into it. So I might say, before you introduce Notebook LM, that's not to say I'm not going to know about AI, but I'll tell them, all right, let's get some sources, let's get some of those things first, maybe do some summaries, as much as I can, and then introduce Notebook LM. Again, it's not a perfect solution because they can still do it on their own, but if you phase some of those things into it, that might make them less likely to say, well, why don't I just use this for all of it?
That's a good point. We felt like this was a good assignment to implement at the level that we're teaching right now.
just going off of basic adult learning theories, we know that adult learners tend to be more self-directed and will tend to kind of understand that they want to learn. Like Danielle was pointing out, when you have a student like her, it's like, okay, yeah, you know that there's a level of good faith that's going on there where they actually want to learn the material. That being said, I have taught graduate level courses in which I caught students who were doing things that they weren't supposed to be doing. So it's not like it's above a graduate student to cheat on something like this. So you do have to be aware of that. Is there any capability in Moodle to check work? I was actually looking for something the other day. I don't know, Nick or Danielle or anybody. Yeah, something like that, because there are checkers where you can check to see if something was likely generated by AI.
We have copy leaks, but AI content generation, or content protection is not a great technology at this point, because even writing assistant tools like Grammarly can falsely identify something as 100% AI generated, which has an equity issue. If I'm English as a second language learner, I could be falsely accused of cheating something that I didn't actually do my ideas, but maybe I cleaned it up to edit it to fit the academic standard that I'm trying to hit to get a better grade, right? So, yes, it could potentially say that this is AI generated. I would say it might be AI enhanced rather than AI generated, but it's a very slippery slope. It's just one indicator to open up a discussion as to how AI is used.
I can be loud.
Okay, be loud.
Are there any software tools that actually show the progress of student work, like I'm thinking Google Docs or something similar, where you could see in a timeline them working on something that couldn't be faked by AI, essentially? I feel like instead of just checking at the end, maybe we could just create the old math teacher motto of show your work, and you can have the points.
I think that's a great point, because I think that with AI, the emphasis that we have on assessment now is the end product rather than the learning process and assessing that as we build through it, or like scaffolding an activity would be another way to consider that as well. It's, yeah, sure.
I won't talk as loudly with the microphone in front of me, but it's, there's no tool that will track it automatically. You could potentially look at saved chats, but again, I can change those and submit something different than what I actually used too. And I think that's the alarming thing, is that the technology is moving quickly, but the what and how and why we assess to go with that is not moving nearly as quickly. And that's a hard part, because we have to change how we work and what we want to see, and maybe that our grading looks different, right? But I do think that we have to consider a shift towards looking at the process of learning and assessing that rather than your final project looks great. Because for me, I don't know about anybody else, I learned more in the process going to that final deliverable than that final deliverable.
Bring the microphone over to you so you don't have to yell.
I've used AI in my professional communication course, and I've used it in real time so that the students can see what is popping out. So I have a student example, with the student's permission, of course, of what an assignment looks like, and then I look at what the AI generation looks like. And then they're able to compare and contrast to see what the work is. To say that the students aren't going to use it, they're going to use it. And I think we also probably have used it in ourselves in spell checking and things like that. So really bringing it into the forefront and just letting them know, hey, these resources are out there, but let's evaluate it in real time, and actually taking 20, 30 minutes out of the class to do that. And what I find is that the students are, yes, they may use it, but they're a little bit more aware of the implications. Like, this might not be as good as I think it is going to be. Or if I was grading this, the AI would get a C and this person would get a B+ because of X, Y, and Z. And so that time and taking that little bit of time helps the students out. And so if they decide to use AI, they're using that on their own discretion, but I'm actually bringing the tool to them and showing them how I would evaluate that work. And so if they use it, and if they don't, they don't. But I'm not shying away from it that they're not going to use it at all.
Excellent, good point. Is there another question over here?
No, say no, you're good. It's so true. You gotta have see the difference between.
Any other questions?
One more here.
I think these are very rich discussions we're having, and we have to have them. You know, we can't sit there and say, no, we have to do it this way because it's changing, the world's different. And I don't know what the right answers are, and I think that as we continue to use it, we will learn more. I'm also, I think, you know, it's good faith. The students want to learn and they want to do. There's always going to be some that want to cheat. I mean, some of us have been teaching long enough that we know, like, those people that are just getting by, and those that really excel. I can't, you know, I can set things up, but I'm never going to get around that. Some people are going to use this as the easy way out, but sometimes it's going to help them. I don't know.
A tool that's available currently to do that kind of audit trail monitoring of student work and how they built it over time, GPT-0. I think it's fully integrated with Google Docs, so it's an extension. Yeah. I think students have to start using it, but if they are using it, then it records beyond what's just in the Google Doc history, like how the document has evolved over time, what was typed. Right? You can sort of watch a little movie of the evolution of that document, and that can be turned in along with the final product. So that's worth looking at. And then just in terms of the cheating, but also in terms of kind of building the kind of skills we want students to develop and be critical. I kind of really like the idea of engaging with AI in conversation back and forth, and an idea that I think connects to what you guys were presenting. As students record conversations, this is a little different, maybe more group work, but record a conversation between two or more students about a text, about text that you selected perhaps. That gets then transcribed, and that transcription, right, is then given to an AI tool for evaluation, right? At that point, your student work is being critically, perhaps, responded to by the AI tool, right? And that makes it more of a conversation than in the educational sphere. You have that recording of the student's conversation as part of what they turn in. Right? There's some accountability there, and it doesn't protect me from cheating completely, but they clearly spent some time dialoguing about that text. And it's not just to prevent cheating, but you're actually developing the skills you want them to have, which is to be able to talk about what they read and demonstrate that they can, retrieve relevant information and, in the moment synthesize and connect. So.
How many people here are using some type of AI or AI component in education? So we're there. We're right there on the cutting edge trying to figure this stuff out. I love it. Question?
It's just that more and more companies are embracing it. I teach engineering, and engineering companies will go out there and look to see, hey, has this been produced, or how has it been produced, or what's the best way to produce it. And so, like this woman said behind me, we need to teach them how to evaluate the information. I've given them questions out of the textbook, and the first thing they do is they'll just go Google it, and it's obviously the wrong answer.
Yeah.
But like I'm asking them about drawing sheets, and it comes up with sheets on a sailboat. Totally. And the kids still write it down. The kids still write it down, and you're going like, did you read what you wrote? And so it's that teaching them that AI isn't always going to give them back the right answer, isn't always going to give them, but they need to be able to evaluate it, look at it, think about it, and understand what am I getting, and now where do I go to look for it? Where do I go to search for the correct answer, and how do I ask it more detailed information to get to that right answer?
Yeah. I'm reading more about what you were saying about the critical thinking skills that they're going to gain